Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. Hey people, hi. If you just tuned in, we are the Dead Milkmen, and tonight we will be your tour guides through the Rock and Roll Hall of What the Fuck. I will be curating the first exhibit. Now, originally I was torn. I thought, do I do Rick Wakeman's King Arthur on Ice? But there aren't enough drugs and alcohol to get me through 3 minutes of that, let alone 10. Or should I do the late Bushwick Bill, R.I.P. Can I get an R.I.P. from everybody for Bushwick Bill? R.I.P. Bushwick Bill. Getting shot, the time he got shot in the eye. So I thought, nah, not that. So I settled on the fake zombies. So let me just say, my main source material for this is called The True Story of the Fake Zombies, the Strangest Con in Rock History, and it's by Daniel Ralston. Now, if you young people watching, or any of you watching don't know who the zombies are, you don't deserve to be loved, ever. You deserve to die alone. Now, I'll move on. Our story takes place in 1969. The band The Zombies had broken up 2 years earlier. They were all off doing different musical projects, like the band Argent, and they had no idea that their American record company had released the song Time of the Season as a single, and it had gone to number 3 on the charts. Now you've got a problem. The Zombies are broken up. They can't tour America, but people in America want to see the Zombies. Basically, this creates a vacuum. And as we all know, both nature and cats hate a vacuum. They abhor it. So somebody had to step in to fill that vacuum. And that somebody was Delta Productions. And not only did they fill it once, they actually filled it twice by putting 2 counterfeit versions of the Zombies out as touring bands. Neither of these bands contained any original members of the Zombies, past or present. One were sort of called the Michigan Zombies, and they played up around Michigan. They were the better of the two, supposedly. And the other ones were called, and we'll get to this other band, the Texas Zombies. And the Texas Zombies were basically like a 12, maybe 13 bar blues band that none of these bands even really did zombie songs. So a lot of our younger viewers, maybe people who didn't quite know who the Zombies were, are probably asking at this minute, how did people not know this? Well, back before the internet and before MTV and before rock and roll magazines, you really didn't know what your favorite musical artist looked like. My parents claim to have seen the Drifters in the 1950s, seen the Drifters 5 times, all different people. My dad's like, to this day, son, I don't know whether or not I've really seen the Drifters. So you could actually do that, as Bob Dylan said, video killed the radio star all along the Watchtower. So where am I? Oh yeah. So this explains why, if you're wondering again, why people didn't know what the bands looked like. It also explains why nobody walked up and said, wait a minute, the Zombies are, and just about nobody, the Zombies are a 5-piece band with a keyboard player. Both of your bands are 4-piece bands with no keyboard player. Occasionally somebody would ask this and they go, oh yeah, the keyboard player, he got busted for pot in Texas, which was like getting busted in Turkey for black tar heroin. You were never seen again. So this was kind of plausible in the 60s as as an excuse. So the bands wind up, people are buying this, people are going to see them, and the bands wind up touring for a while. But it's so bad that even Rolling Stone magazine figures out something is wrong. And eventually they published a story called The Zombies Are a Stiff, proving that in 50 years, Rolling Stone has just not gotten any better writing headlines. They still suck at it. And so the jig was up. But that didn't stop our friends at Delta Productions. Since they couldn't have the Zombies out there, they went and created a fake version of the Archies. That should have worked because the Archies were a cartoon band, so anybody could have been the Archies. But Don Kirshner found out about this, and he quickly moved his legal team into action, like a SWAT team, so they stomped it. Undaunted, and because this had worked twice, the folks at Delta Productions created a fake version of the Animals, again, using a 4-piece with no keyboard player. This would have worked had it not been for the singer of the Animals, and probably the most underrated singer in rock and roll, and a hero of mine, Eric Burton, probably next to me, the most angry man in rock and roll, and definitely somebody who will punch you. Look, I bought this ring at a punk rock festival over the weekend so I could punch people in it. To pull in Eric Burton. He went to go see the fake zombies, and he brought some friends, which were a biker gang. And he said, "You're not the fake zombies anymore." And they said, no, we're not, Mr. Burton. And I think they got reconstructive surgery and fled to another country. So that is the story of the fake zombies. Now, some bonus what the fuckery. If you take a look at the Zombies album, the Odyssey and the Oracle, you will probably notice that the word Odyssey is misspelled. That is because the man who designed the album cover couldn't spell. But the Zombies and their record label told everybody it's psychedelic, man, and which is so Pee Wee Herman going, I meant to do that. And my other bonus, what the fuckery, is the band ZZ Top. By the way, the Texas Zombies, two of the members of that band went on to be two of the members of ZZ Top. So there you go. There's some, and they don't talk about the Texas Zombies, but. The thing is, ZZ Top, when they were in England in the early 80s, they were on a TV show, it might have been Top of the Pops, where Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark were playing, and they became obsessed with Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. So much so, if you went, and this is true, if you went to see ZZ Top, the music you heard before ZZ Top was Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. ZZ Top became, they're obsessed with synths. The album Eliminator was their attempt to make a very synthy album, which it is. So it is quite possible that not only having been two members in the fake Zombies, but it's also possible ZZ Top could also be known as one of the most successful synth pop bands in history. So before we move on to the next section, which I believe is curated by Mr. Talcum, do we have any questions? And please don't ask me when we get to see the basement of the Alamo. Do you have any questions about the fake zombies I might be able to answer?
Well, did the real zombies find out about this eventually?
They did, and it caused a problem. Because let's say you're in the real Zombies, and you call up a radio station, and you say, "Hi, I'm Rod Argent from the real Zombies, and you've got a band playing in Boston tonight, and they're not us." The radio station would go, "How do we know you're not in the fake Zombies?" And this is 1969. These people were on drugs. They're probably like, "How do I know I'm not Rod Argent?" So you can see the problem right there. You can't prove, and I think even the record companies, they went to see the record companies, and the record companies like, "Well, how do we know you're not?" So eventually the Zombies did get back together because they had a hit, and they reunited long enough to tour, and God bless Rod Argent, who is one of the most talented keyboard players on the earth, and just a great musician. So yeah, that's the deal with the fake Zombies. Do we have any more questions, or do we go to our next exhibit, which is curated by Mr. Talcum?
I was just going to ask if they ever actually reunited, but you answered that.
Yeah, the Zombies did reunite. In fact, they're right here with me right now. Oh. Joseph, you want to take us to the next exhibit?
I am going to show you or talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame What the Fuck of a movie, a musical comedy that came out in 1978 called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Has anybody seen that? No? Good. Well, don't see it. Okay, imagine this. It's 1978. The Bee Gees are at the height of their career. They had provided songs for the movie Saturday Night Fever, which is a huge hit, multi-platinum soundtrack. John Travolta made him a star. Peter Frampton is also at the height of his career. He's a guitar player, singer. He had an album on the top of the charts for I don't know how many weeks. Peter Frampton Comes Alive, right? And he feels, what's that?
I just said Frampton comes in your mouth. Ignore me. Just ignore me. I'll just be quiet.
So there's a lot of, they star in this movie. There's a lot of hype for it. It's comprised solely of Beatles songs, including the song Sgt. Pepper, which it's, I guess, based on very loosely. But it has really no dialogue except for narration by George Burns. But the movie is a complete flop. Critics hate it. Audiences hate it. It gets pulled out of the theaters really quickly. However, Aerosmith and Earth, Wind, and Fire both get top 40 hits out of it. Aerosmith did The Beatles Come Together, and not a bad version, and Got to Get You in My Life by Earth, Wind, and Fire, which actually is better than the Beatles version, in my opinion, or hits, and the album sells pretty well. But the movie, no, there's barely any plot. I'll try to explain it, though. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is a band from the World War I era, from a fictional town in the States called Heartland, where everything is wonderful and happiness is abounding. They get sent to World War I as a marching band, and they help to win the war because their music is so mesmerizing that the armies stop fighting, which is hard to believe, but that's how the movie starts. Because they're brightly colored outfits, they wear these, just like in the Sgt. Pepper's album cover of the Beatles, that's how they're dressed. So how can you not believe that they'd be easy targets for the Germans? But they just stopped fighting because I guess the music's so great. Anyway, Sgt. Pepper dies in 1958. The basic plot is that Sgt. Pepper had a son named Billy Shears, which makes no sense to me because you would think his name would be Billy Pepper if he's Sgt. Pepper's son. No, his name's Billy Shears, just like in the Beatles song. And he fronts a band that they call Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band after his father, Sgt. Pepper. And they get a record contract with Big Deal Records, Big BD Records, and they
Big D? Okay.
yeah. They go to Hollywood in a balloon, of all things. But the balloon gets hit by a jet airliner, a private jet, on their way, and you would think that would kill them, but no, they magically appear in the jet and land in Hollywood, where
Skinner on that plane?
What's that?
Was it Leonard Skinner on that plane?
It was Wings. That's where they got Wings from.
It makes no sense that they should have died, and it would have been a better movie if they would have died right then and there.
Yes.
Because there were only 3 songs or 4 songs.
Anyway.
In Hollywood, they're wined and dined by the record company that wants to sign them. They don't make them, I guess. They smoke drugs, and Billy unbeknownst to him, gets a Mickey put in his champagne. And he ends up having, I guess, sex with Lucy of Lucy and the Diamonds, a Wicked band that's also on their label. You know that she's Wicked because you see a headline in a paper that says so. And none of this really, I know, I have to move on quickly. But they record an album like in a day, and within a week, they're huge international superstars. And their tour, they have a whole tour booked. But in the meantime, this guy named Mr. Mustard, who works for the FVB, the Future Villain Band, played by Aerosmith, get me Mr. Mustard to steal what you find out are 4 magical instruments that belong to the original Sgt. Pepper band from a museum in Heartland. And those magical instruments are what are apparently keeping Heartland happy, because as soon as they're stolen, Heartland goes to hell. Punk rockers come and ruin the arcades. Me, Mr. Mustard buys up all the real estate and opens up brothels and casinos, and it's a terrible place. There's trash everywhere. And Billy Shears' girlfriend decides that she's going to leave and go find Billy and tell them what's happened to Heartland. And she does. She gets to Hollywood, finds Billy, explains what's going on, and they decide that they have to now rescue Heartland by finding the magical musical instruments, which are distributed amongst the FBV people, including Steve Martin, who's some kind of plastic surgeon. That doesn't even make any sense, but he's creating an army for Alice Cooper's character, the Sun King, or Father Son, who works for FBB to take over the world and stop democracy. So there's in pursuit of the magical instruments, other things happen, and Billy's girlfriend, whose name is Strawberry Fields of all things, gets killed by trying to rescue. It's Steven Tyler of FVB, the villain band, Future Villain Band. Almost strangles Billy Shears on top of a huge stage that's made out of, or made to look like it's out of stacks of coins and money, because money is the only thing that the Future Villain Band organization likes. They hate love and they hate joy. They only like money. So they have a Strawberry tied up, but she somehow gets loose enough that she can force Steven Tyler off of Billy Shears, who's played by Peter Frampton, of course. Peter Frampton, I should have said that. and she knocks over Steven Tyler and kills him, but in the process, she loses her balance and also falls off that huge stage and dies. And that's very sad. The next scene you see is because they got all the magical instruments back together. Heartland is happy again, but the strawberry from Heartland is dead, and she's at a funeral. They're at a funeral, and where am I?
I have no idea.
Oh yeah, so she's dead, and Billy is sad, and so sad that he tries to kill himself, which will be a great ending of the movie in my opinion, by jumping off the museum's roof. But in midair, the weather vane, which is shaped like Sergeant Pepper, the weather vane of the town comes to life in the form of Billy Preston and zaps Billy so he doesn't fall. He rises back up and zaps the mean guys and makes them into saints and zaps the grave of Strawberry and brings her back to life, and everything's happy. And then you see them sing the finale, the Sergeant Pepper song, and you see a bunch of famous people in the crowd singing along, including Carol Channing.
Call back to last episode.
Nice. And that's the end of the movie. So I spoiled it for you. I'm sorry.
You're probably going to hate me for raising my hand to ask a question. I have two questions. First, Joe, do you know who the original pick was to play the future villain band and why they couldn't do it?
The Sex Pistols?
Nope, Kiss. And they couldn't do it because they decided to do Kiss versus the Phantom of the Amusement Park, which will also one day be an exhibit in the Rock and Roll Hall of What the Fuck.
That would be a good exhibit.
New episode.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, if we do, we could stretch this out for a while.
Yeah, what is wrong with this movie? Yeah, the songs are actually, even though they're Beatles songs, they are, and the music is arranged by George Martin, who produced the Beatles. They're like soulless versions of them. I guess they got studio musicians to play them. The Bee Gees sing backups. Peter Frampton sings most of the leads. It's just soulless. So the only two good songs are Aerosmith, and they got to play their own instruments, and they may have done their own arrangement. I don't know. And Earth, Wind, and Fire song, their song was not produced by George Martin. That probably saved their song.
Did you know that, again, I'm raising my hand in the museum. Did you know, or the Hall of What the Fuck, did you know that John Lennon saw this film twice? It was the in-flight movie on a plane when he was flying somewhere, so he was forced to see it. And then on his way back, they had to reroute him. They had to put him on a different plane, and he was forced to see it going somewhere and coming back. And I imagine getting shot was probably not as bad as that.
He's probably like,
I also don't understand how the Beatles, or John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison let their songs be in this.
Did they own them at that point, or were they already up? Did Michael Jackson buy them at that point?
No, this is long.
This is 78. Yeah. And I just found out, I watched a Bee Gees documentary earlier today to see if they would have anything to say about it, and they did. They knew it was going to be a bomb, but Saturday Night Fever hadn't been released by the time that movie, the Sgt. Pepper movie, was filmed.
The Bee Gees bought back their entire catalog except that album. That's true. They wanted nothing to do with it. They blamed it for like tanking their careers. Yeah.
But their career really didn't get tanked. They still had Too Much Heaven. They still had the collaboration with Streisand and other things. I think it did tank Frampton's career, though. He never came back from that. Really.
Did you say Steven Tyler's character fell off the stage?
Yeah, he falls off. Yeah,
well, he might have had a stunt.
Well, yeah. They don't bring him back though.
I could be wrong, but either edit this out or I'll send a link. I'm pretty sure there's a video of Steven Tyler falling off stage in real life like 10 years ago, maybe, or
I'd be disappointed if there wasn't.
Maybe somebody pushed him. I don't know.
But he didn't get killed.
Yeah, he didn't die.
Strawberry.
Anyway.
Well, Joe, thank you for that lovely synopsis of the film that I will never watch.
Never watch.
I actually feel like maybe I should watch it to see if your description of it is better than the.
I know everything about it, and I've never seen it.
I've always seen the record in like thrift stores, and I'm like, is it fake? Is this like somebody just faked an album cover? Yeah, that was the year I was born, by the way. So it's talk about being born under a bad sign. So my exhibit is going to be we're going to be breaking the fourth wall here a little bit. I'm going to turn it around on you guys, but I'm going to give my perspective first, and maybe if we have time, which we probably won't, you guys give a little bit of backstory on it. But I chose the appearance of the Dead Milkmen on Club MTV. I did not see it when it aired. I was not a fan or aware of you guys at that point, but in like the mid 90s, writing letters to Joe. And at some point, Joe sent me a VHS tape that had a bunch of your videos and stuff, and it had that on it. And I must have watched it at least 3 times in a row. I just kept rewinding it because I had seen that show before, and I always thought it was the lamest thing. I was like, why does this show even exist? And to see you guys on it. But what it actually did for me was kind of solidify like the spirit of the band, at least in my view. To take something like a mainstream, show where you guys are being seen by millions of people, and to completely make a mockery of it. It's just, I don't know. That's kind of how, like, I don't know if that's in my personality, if I learned it from you guys. But that's kind of how I've lived my life. And a lot of it has to do with that Club MTV appearance, because downtown Julie Brown tries so hard to keep her cool and be funny and cool about it. And I know you guys have stories about this, but Rodney, you handcuff yourself to her and she's losing her shit. And Dave's like hitting the microphone. He's like, these mics don't even work. And clearly they do, because you can hear it. Dean, as soon as the song ends, all you hear is like, Joe's the only one that's trying to lip sync to the song, and he's not doing a very good job. And he's wearing the most ridiculous baseball cap I've ever seen in my life. Joe, I've never seen you wear a hat ever, other than that.
Chirps.
Rodney has a tuba with him, which is just perfect somehow. I don't know. Were
Dave with the cardboard box that said bass amp on it.
And bass is spelled B-A-S-E.
Yes.
And I was kind of hoping you were going to go do it like a report though, and go on, I don't know, like May 6, 1990 or whatever it was, third tier punk band, the Dead Milkmen, appeared on Club MTV. And we can sit there and go, this is interesting. Well,
it's funny. She says in the very beginning, when she's introducing you guys, that these guys are finally getting some mainstream success, which is really important to them. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're showing it right now in this video.
Yeah, it was like right after, MTV or whatever decided to play Punk Rock Girl 5 times an hour or whatever they did. So that's why it was.
Yeah, and our record company, we said no, we're not going to do it. And they said somebody said they were going to lose their job if we didn't. Yeah.
They said, "Oh well, this isn't a thing you can say no to. You have to do it."
So we had a list of demands, and they met our demands.
Well, if we have to do it, we'll do it on our own terms.
Well, then we also got a friend of ours was a comedian, Chris Kosha, we filled an entire garbage bag full of these bait worms or rubber worms are used for bait. So that's where the worms came from.
Behind the stage, he was just throwing them over us.
He starts hurling them over. Yeah.
Did you know the people in the crowd? Like,
no.
They were her dancers. They were regulars on. Many of them were regulars on the show, and they would do They would do whatever dance was necessary.
Yeah.
They were doing the circle dance or this sort of moshing for us because that's the dance that they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then they practiced stage diving and stuff. I remember there was a couple.
Then one of the cameramen at the end of it came up and hugged me. He goes, "I've been here for 6 months and this is the best day I've ever had. The only good day." Yeah, it was. What are you going to do? You need to,
Well, she kind of switched her demeanor when the camera stopped, right?
Yes.
I will say I was very attracted to downtown Julie Brown. I really. Yeah.
Well, you handcuffed yourself there.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
When the camera stopped, someone had to get the key to unlock it. And Rodney gave me the key, and it was in my pocket.
And it was like a little train. Joe with the engine, and I've got my hand in Joe's pocket, and downtown.
I wouldn't take the key out of my pocket. So some guy put his hands in my pocket.
Yeah. So it kept getting longer and longer.
What? Is he really going to do this?
And then
that guy was a member of the fake zombie. So we go back.
The last comment I wanted to make was it was absolute pure genius at the very, very end of the clip when she's like, these guys are great. They're on tour. And Joe's like, yeah, we're in Washington right now. What the fuck?
We were.
Yeah. I don't know.
We had to take a train up from Washington to DC, do the show, and go back to Washington. Yeah.
Oh, wait, 2 shows in a row. We had 2 shows at the 9:30 Club. 2 shows in a row at the 9:30 Club. So we had a hotel there, but we took Amtrak to New York City, did that, took Amtrak back, and played the second show.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's
Yes.
move on to the next exhibit in the Rock and Roll What the Fuck Museum here. The year was 1979, and the English prog rock band called Supertramp released an album called Breakfast in America. Little did we know that this LP cover, the cover of the album, predicted the attack on the World Trade Center 22 years later on 9/11. So let's back up a bit. Supertramp was a British prog band who sort of got poppier as they went along. Their first album contract was financed by a guy named Stanley August Miesengies. He helped get them their first record contract. According to a photo that I got online, he could be wearing, he's shown pictured talking to this woman. He could be wearing a Masonic medallion around his neck. He might have been a 33rd degree Mason. Nobody knows. But curiously, this particular album by Supertramp was recorded in Los Angeles at a studio called The Village. And The Village was originally built in the 1920s as a Masonic temple. So I don't know what's going on here. Oh, by the way, Steely Dan's Asia and Frank Zappa's Joe's Garage was also recorded at the studio. So let's get to the actual album itself, the cover. If you will recall, we'll put a picture of it up right now here on the screen. And you can see a woman dressed as a waitress standing in front of the skyline. If you look carefully, you'll notice that you're actually looking at the woman through the outline of an airplane window. And the woman is dressed as a waitress, but she's sort of standing in for the Statue of Liberty, which is, right outside, right in the water across from Manhattan in New York City. And you notice that she has her hand raised in the air with a glass of orange juice. By the way, the woman's name was Kate Murtaugh. She lived till the ripe old age of 96. And we have a picture of her as well. She seems like a nice lady. She was an actress, comedian, I guess, got hired to do the photo shoot and was featured on the album cover. But anyway, so let's get to the album cover evidence that this album cover actually predicted the attack on the World Trade Center on 9/11, 22 years later after it came out. The first piece of evidence we have is you can see, obviously, we mentioned, you can see New York City. You are looking outside of an airline window. So that's framing the picture. The second thing I want to draw your attention to is the glass of orange juice is held over the center of the World Trade Center towers behind her. And the glass of orange juice represents the fireball that the towers turned into when the planes collided with the building, okay? The third item I would like to draw your attention to is just above the World Trade Center. If you hold the record up to a mirror, the band name Supertramp, if you look at it in a mirror image, you'll notice that the U and the P of the band's name in Supertramp resembles the number 9/11, okay? Furthermore, the words super and tramp are synonyms for great and whore, which indicates the great whore of Babylon, of course. The figure from Christian mythology.
Right there.
With Babylon also mentioned is the place of evil in the book of Revelation. So, of course, New York City is the evil kingdom, right? Coincidentally, also, the back cover also features a little logo with a plane sort of flying towards the World Trade Center. And the fifth reason that I want to raise here, and it will be what I rest my case on, is earlier in their career, Supertramp released an LP called Crime of the Century. I rest my case.
Yeah. Dean, I think you actually missed one, though.
What was that?
10 letters in Supertramp, 10 letters in George Bush.
No, I didn't see that anywhere.
Coincidence? Well, that's because I just came up with it while we're sitting here.
Okay.
I run the hall of what the fuck. By the way, if you want to check out two other album covers, you can check out, there's a band called Coup, and I believe it was called Party Music, the album. It's them with a sample trigger, and they're blowing up the World Trade Center. They did that in June of 2001, and the album was supposed to come out in September, and they had to get another cover. There was actually a punk band called Squad 50, and they had an album called Bombs Over Broadway, which was them coming at the World Trade Center or coming away from it with bombers. But the person who might have suffered the most is probably the most famous person that we have ever talked about on this show. I am, of course, talking about the Compressor. The Compressor had a song in which he started ragging on New York City, and he's like, "Compressor will fly planes into your buildings." And for the video, they had to take that whole line out, and they just replaced it with this old man playing the piano, and it's probably creepier than that line. So, but mad props to the Compressor. We love it.
Do I have any other questions
He's
from
responsible for Building 7's collapse.
Yeah.
the audience? Yeah.
What does Supertramp themselves say about this?
They had, they were long broken up since then. The two main songwriters ended up not getting along after a while.
Okay.
Parted ways. The album sold millions. I think it had 4 top 10 hits on it. It was one of, I guess, might have been their biggest album of their careers. Yeah.
If I had 9/11 conspiracy people looking at me for stuff, I wouldn't leave the house. I wouldn't. No, it can't be.
The first one I ever saw was Joe had that game, the Illuminati game.
Yeah.
Came out before the September 11th, and it mentioned something about the Twin Towers being, or is it actually the Twin Towers?
Yeah, but they'd been attacked before. They were attacked years before. Somebody put a bomb in there. So people kept referencing it afterwards because the initial bombers, the people who drove the bomb in, and we can cut all this. They were completely incompetent. And
he tried to get his money back for the Ryder truck. He went to get his money back for the Ryder truck that he drove into the basement.
You can find a link between anything. If you give me a Partridge Family album, I will promise you, I'll give you a link to 9/11. Clearly, the Partridge Family were involved. Yes. Nervous mother driving. Why so nervous? Yeah. All right. Are we ready to do recommendations? Or
a lot of end.
Yeah. All right, folks. We're going to leave the Rock and Roll Hall of what the fuck for a minute, and I'm going to do recommendations. Okay. So my first recommendation is for a movie. And this movie came out in 1966. It is part of the Criterion Collection. Ooh, fancy schmancy. It was a big influence on Matt Damon, Nicolas Cage, Quentin Tarantino, and Tim Burton. And I know what you're all thinking, and you're probably right. It's War of the Gargantuas. Yes, it is indeed War of the Gargantuas. This is a Japanese kaiju film. It's the sequel to Frankenstein Conquers the World. In that movie, Frankenstein gets blown up. The Frankenstein that was the Japanese Frankenstein, the one that was created from the heart of Frankenstein that was involved in the Hiroshima blast and then mutated and was like a monkey boy that became a giant and gets killed in Mount Fuji. His DNA or whatever, they call them his cells, they get scattered. They become 2 different monsters, one big green monster, one big orange monster. The real reason to see this film, and I go to sleep for this movie every night, is because about 20 minutes into it, Carol Burnett's sister-in-law shows up at a Japanese club and sings a song called "The Words Get Stuck in My Throat." This is the song that includes the lyrics, "If I had a hidden microphone inside of my heart, I would turn the power on. It would amplify my love for you and promise to be true, and you would never be gone." This song is so great that the band Devo used to do it in their live concerts. So please, if you have HBO Max or Turner Classic Movies, tonight, please watch War of the Gargantuas. It's got Russ Tamblyn in it, who was in West Side Story, Twin Peaks, and a lot of Al Adamson biker films that only I've seen. So
he's David Cross's father-in-law, by the way.
Yeah, I'll buy that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The second thing I'm going to recommend is this: magazines, rock and roll magazines. Don't show up to see a band and you don't know what they look like. We learned that with the Fake Zombies. This is the hipsters made a mistake. They brought back all the bad old technology. They brought back typewriters, they brought back turntables, they brought back shockingly low IQs. But the goths, who are like the punks, only they drink wine and we drink beer, they brought back magazines. And look, you can look in these and you can see, this is like a companion to my show. You can see what these people look like. And there's, some of these have actual Milkmen tie-ins. There's Assemblage 23 tie-in to the Milkmen. And this also satisfies our condition of mentioning Stephen Archer and Donna Lynch in pretty much every third or fourth episode. So here you go. This one over here has Ash Code, which were really good. It's got Twin Tribes, Clan of Zymox, and Dan, it's got Nilbog. That's Goblin backwards. Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Procession Magazine. If you live in Philadelphia, you can actually buy this at Crash Bang Boom. So yeah, please get these. These are really good.
Cool.
I recommend that you do not, under any circumstances, watch the movie Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts.
Yes.
Despite the fact that it's readily available on several streaming services, it's available for video on demand, and it's available on Blu-ray and DVD.
If they show it on an airplane, get up and walk out.
Yeah.
Did you watch it today, Joe?
No, I watched it on Monday, and then I watched it again.
Cried for 3 days, right?
Tuesday.
Watch it again.
I had my rental's over. I can't watch it.
That was the film playing when DB Cooper jumped out of the airplane.
Yeah. Wait, they charged you for that?
Can I write it off?
They should have to pay you. Yeah, write it off.
Write that off. That's a business expense.
Expense.
You know, you have some punitive damages there too.
Punitive damages.
Oh, I recommend something I just became aware of, the Sound Mind Network, which is a foundation started in part by Joe Nicolo, who was an engineer who recorded the last single we put out. But he works with this foundation to help people with addiction problems. It's like a recovery based, but it's also just to try to, people can put their music out there or not if they choose. It's just about expression and trying to work through another way to work through recovery from addiction. So if you have somebody who's addicted to something and they're creative, check out this website. We'll leave a link to it here. That's all.
I'm going to recommend, I can't remember, I might have recommended this a long time ago on the show, but I just finished rewiring my home studio. And one of the key ingredients of this whole setup is a patch bay. I don't know if you can see this, but a patch bay is very handy when you have lots of items that you want to get into your interface for your computer. Basically, you can leave all the inputs wired up in the back and all your, in my case, synthesizers and things, drum machines and things, hooked up, ready to go. So there's no like rerunning cables across the room and around furniture and this, that, and the other. Also, I have a couple of effects units wired in, so I can patch any incoming instrument through an effects unit and then into the computer. So it's great. You can even chain them all together. So I highly recommend, if you do any home recording at all, you can investigate patch bays. They're not very expensive at all. They don't even require power. They're all passive. You can get one for probably about 80 or 90 bucks. They're pretty cheap. I highly recommend it. Anyway, that's my recommendation.
Cool.
Yeah, really, really, really. Dickhead move, committee. Dickhead move. Let her compete. All right. They let George Takei. George Takei got caught with a little bit of THC, and they let him fly the Starship Enterprise. So let her compete. All right. Yeah. Remember, kids. Pot is only a performance-enhancing drug if you play bass in a reggae band. All right. It's not. Let her compete.